ମୁଁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ସେଇ ତିନି ଜଣ ଯାକ ମୋର ବନ୍ଧୁ ଏବଂ ବିଶିଷ୍ଟ ଅନୁବାଦକମାନଙ୍କୁ ମଞ୍ଚ ଉପରକୁ ଆସିବାକୁ ଅନୁରୋଧ କରୁଛି। ପ୍ରଫେସର ଚିତ୍ତରଞ୍ଜନ ମିଶ୍ର, ପ୍ରଫେସର ଗୋପରଞ୍ଜନ ମିଶ୍ର ଏବଂ ପ୍ରଫେସର ସ୍ନେହପ୍ରଭା ଦାସ, ଆପଣମାନେ ଆସି ଆଜିର ଯେଉଁ ଅନୁବାଦ ସମ୍ପର୍କରେ ଯେଉଁ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକ୍ରମ ଅଛି ତାକୁ ଆଗକୁ ନେଇଯିବେ ବୋଲି ମୁଁ ଆଶା କରୁଛି। ଧନ୍ୟବାଦ। ଗୋପବଧୂ ବାବୁ ଟିକେ ଅଦୃଶ୍ୟ ହୋଇଯାଇଛନ୍ତି, 2 ମିନିଟ୍ ଭିତରେ ଅଛନ୍ତି ଆମ ଗଣରେ, ଆସିବେ। ସେ ବହୁତ ଅସୁସ୍ଥ ଥିଲେ, କେବଳ ମୋରି ଅନୁରୋଧକୁ ଏଡ଼ି ନ ପାରି ସେ ଆସିଛନ୍ତି, ସେଥିପାଇଁ ମୁଁ ଗଭୀର ଭାବରେ କୃତଜ୍ଞ।
ଜୟ ଜଗନ୍ନାଥ। My humble greetings to the audience, erudite audience, and my 2 friends. I would not call them colleagues because Goparanjan Mishra has been my classmate since the 70s, and Chitta sir also, I know him very well. I am also very disappointed that Mini Krishnan madam could not make it. My book, she has also, one of my translations has been published by Oxford Press, University Press, and I know her personally very well. She should have been here to moderate the program, but we are unfortunate that she could not make it. So, when Manu sir gave me the title of this program, it was Translation as Transformation. It was Translation as Transformation. Sorry, I have forgotten to thank Odisha Literature and Art Festival, and especially Manu Das, who has always been a good friend and was always kind enough to invite me to all his programs. So thank you, Manu sir, and thank you, Olaf, and thank you, Gopa sir, and thank you, Chitta sir. So I would, before I go into my opinions about translation as transformation, I would like Professor Gopa Mishra to enlighten us and throw some light on this concept. Translation as transformation. What is your opinion about it, sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. From the beginning, I must make it clear that I have not been keeping well, but because of the insistence of Mr. Manu Das, I came here, and of course, the attraction was the presence of my friend Snehaprabha Das and Chittaranjan Mishra. I have some throat problem, and there has been a minor dental surgery also. So I will not be able to say as much as I would have loved to. Translation involves transformation of text and contexts. And in India, this concept is relevant because of the rich cultural tapestry and vast linguistic diversities. As I was listening to the lively session in Hindi poetry in the presence of the poet as well as the translator, I was wondering whether I should speak something about the topic that has been given, or I should read out a few poems in Hindi and in Odia, which I have translated into English. 1 or 2 poems of Guljar and a portion of a long poem by Mohapatra. I'm sure one of these 2 has left for the other world. But I'm sure if he were alive, he would have loved to attend this function and say a few things about this concept of translation. Well, before we proceed, let me hand over the mic to my friend, Dr. Chittaranjan Misra.
Actually, the topic is translation as transformation, India in Indian English. So the topic has multiple connotations surrounding the concept of translation. I'd rather like to speak about Odia poetry and how the genesis of Odia poetry is rooted in translation. But before that, I must say that translation is a very innate capability of humans, because we translate the objective world into the verbal medium. And whenever we talk, whenever we speak, let alone writing aesthetically some poems or novels, any human being for that matter translates. And in Odia poetry, if we go back to 15th century, to our Adi Kavi, Sarala Das, he was not only translating, he was transcreating, but his basis was the Sanskrit original. And he did not dwell much on abstractions that we find in Sanskrit translation. He even didn't translate the Bhagavad Gita of the Mahabharata. So Sarala Das, in his Mahabharata, he has tried to translate the objective world, the matter-of-fact world around him, and keeping in consonance with the base storyline that was in Sanskrit Mahabharata. He wanted to distort, he wanted to insert, innovate many things so that the common people can understand Mahabharata. And I am reminded of one particular image that Sarala Das has contributed to world mythology, I can say. That is the image of Navagunjara. So this can be taken as a substitute for the description of Vishwarupa, which we find in all classical versions of Mahabharata. So when Arjuna was shown Vishwarupa by Lord Krishna, it was a different thing. It was full of philosophy, high philosophy, but Sarala Das has not dwelt much on that. He has rather transferred the sight to the wild forest where Arjuna was praying God for getting the Vyastra, Pasupata and others. And he was attracted by a wild quadruped. And that image is really very innovative, because there we find the head of a rooster, the neck of a peacock, and legs are, one leg is of an elephant, another is of a tiger, another is a horse, and the fourth forearm is a human arm, a human hand holding a lotus. And the back is that of an ox, and the tail is a serpent. So there are 9 animals. You know, the interconnectedness of these limbs of the animals create a kind of rupa, a kind of shape, which is divine, which is terrible, and which is beautiful at the same time. So Sarala Das's vision is very ecocentric, because he is not giving supremacy to human hand or human being. It is not anthropocentric. It is ecocentric. So it is a kind of creation of a totem, and which I think we can adopt it as a totem or an emblem of Odia identity, which was created by Sarala Das, and which is a kind of parallel to Vishwarupa Darshan. That means God is in every life form, whether it is an animal or whether it is a serpent or whether it's a human being. So that is a beautiful kind of creation of Sarala Das. So if we go for the if you theorize it, we can say that it is not translation from any pre-existing text that was preceding Sarala Das, but Sarala Das created it. So Sarala Das vernacularized, Sarala Das created, innovated so many things, and it is nothing but translation. So he is translating Vishwarupa. He is thinking about the reality. So anytime a human being tries to realize or to recreate in words or a mental picture of Vishwarupa, he is translating. And not only that, when we come to literary translation, when we are creating one text in another language from a source text, then it is also translation. So translation has a philosophical, background which we all human beings are engaged in. And translation that we are talking about here right now is translation from one language to another language. And Oriya poetry, I think, is very, very rooted in translation. Jagannath Das's translation of Srimad Bhagavata, it's standardized Oriya language. And it is full of abstractions. Jagannath Das's translation and Sarala Das's Mahabharata are two directions. So one direction is popular and rooted in lived experiences, whereas Jagannath Das's translation is about higher philosophies of life, and from both the texts, Oriya life has been shaped, because even now we quote Sarala Das without knowing it. We also, in our day-to-day transactions, we are referring to the proverbial extracts from Jagannath Das's Bhagavata. Karma kasana deha sahe, aranya ajagara pray. There are so many lines that actually a kind of, it disciplines our consciousness and disciplines our lifestyle. So I think since translation is the beginning of Odia literature, I can say, and when we come to English or Indian English, how India is represented in Indian English, it is a totally different story, because English people first translated our text into English because they wanted to rule us. They wanted to know our lifestyle, our weak points, our strength, and for their governance, they wanted to know us, and in the process, they translated it for their own advantage. So Sakuntala was translated by William Jones. They translated the Bhagavad Gita. They translated, Sanskrit classics, and it was during the British period, but only later, only in 19th century, the Indian intellectuals intervened, and they took up translating Indian text into English. But to some extent, they were treated as, in critical theory, they say that they are like native informants. They were talking about their own secrets to the foreign colonizer, and the colonizers wanted to know the native secrets, so that Orientalism was a kind of device to manage and control Indians. So translation is, is very, very related and is steeped in politics. So translation has, it is practical, and it has also a poetic side. Translation is both philosophical, practical, it is aesthetic and political at the same time. So I would like Ma'am, Sneha Prabha Ma'am, to throw light more on this.
I rather, excuse me, I would like, before I would also read out some of my stanzas, few stanzas about ancient stanzas about which Sir just spoke about. But let me just speak very few things about the topic. What do we understand by transformation? Transformation is a change. When we are translating, do we actually transform it? Transformation means a change, total change. In this context, I am reminded of a very funny line from Midsummer Night's Dream. Those who have read it, we have also, my colleagues have read it, but those who know it, there is a scene in Act 3 when a character, a magician called Puck, who changes the face of another character whose name was Bottom and replaces his human head with that of a donkey. And his friend, another character, Quince, he comes and says, my, thou art translated. So Shakespeare has used that word translated to define a complete transformation of a human face to that of a donkey's. So if we take that as transformation, translation or transformation as translation, we cannot say that we can replace the entire face of a book, the text of a book, to produce a new text. Yes, we produce a parallel text, we produce the other text, and then when we translate or when the transformation, the partial transformation takes place, how much of the original text gets transformed and how much remains intact. So a text is not a single unit. It is made up of multifarious, it has many contours. When you say a text, suppose say a novel or a story, three major things you have to find out in a story. One is the subject matter. Next is the pattern, narrative pattern, how the style of saying it, how the story, suppose an Oriya story. You know the subject matter, you cannot transform it. The style, you cannot transform the style totally. You can change paragraphs, word orders, shift of paragraphs, shift of means areas of expression. But when we come to the third and most important point in translation as a transformation, this is the language. So language is a total transformation. Writing a story in English, which is originally written in Oriya, it demands a kind of transformative effort. One has to transform it. So how much of the language do you translate or transform? Because the first concern of a translator is from what language he is translating, he or she is translating, and to which language he or she is translating. If you are telling that you are translating from Oriya to Bengali, or Oriya to Hindi, Oriya to Assamese, these languages belong to one linguistic subgroup that is called Indo-Aryan subgroup. They have some similarity of expression. And when you do an Oriya text or a Bengali text or a Hindi text in English, because English is a different language, it belongs to another subgroup, the Indo-European subgroup. And whereas one of these other languages in this group are German, Spanish, French. I'll not go into the linguistic aspect anymore into that, but the thing is, excuse me, you have to find out, translation is not exactly about equivalence. It is not search for equivalence or equivalent expressions of words, because when you are using words, it is also a very tricky affair. How do you transform words? Because words have many nuances. There is a few lines, Emily Dickinson says that a word is dead when it is said. I say, one day I say, and it begins to live on that day. So when a word is, once it is said, it loses its meaning, value. It can be renewed, it can be reshaped into another connotation. It can have another connotative aspect. So then you have to be very careful as to how you are using the words. You are to be more concerned about the denotative, about the connotative aspect rather than the dictionary meaning or denotative aspect. So transformation takes place on 3 levels, or mostly on 2 levels. One is on the style or narrative pattern. The other one is the handling of the words. How do you, for whom you are translating, and whether you find equivalent words or not, equivalent expressions, because the words they could be culture specific, they could be mood specific, they could be your kind of feelings. They could express your feelings whenever you express your feelings through a particular word. You do not expect the language which the others read it in that language, when the others read it in that language, whether this exact mood could be transformed, transferred instead of being transformed to that language. So translation is more about transferring the mood, transferring the expression, than to transform an entire text. I will go into that rather in a more serious way after Professor Mishra reads out his poems.
I will give 2 examples which have been influencing right from my childhood. One is Alexander Selkirk, William Cooper by Madhusudan Rao. The other one is Radhanath Rai, Barsa. So I think they are more than the originals. Oh, solitude, where are the charms of the sages I've seen in thy face? Better dwell in the midst of alarms than reign in this horrible place. So, society, friendship and love divinely bestowed upon man. Oh, had I the wings of a dove, how would I have tasted you again? I am monarch of all I survey. My right there is none to dispute. From the center or down to the sea, I am lord of the fowl and the brute, see Madhusudan Rao. देखई नेत्र जहा चौदिगर से सर्वर टई मुअधीश्वर महिमंडले नाही हेमंत जन मुअधिकार लोभे करिवरण थान्ता जदि मोर विहंग पक्ष लंघी भीषण गिरी समुद्र वक्ष देखन्ति प्रियजन मुख कमल हुअन्ता संतापित प्राण शीतल बरं निवास भल रणक्षेत्र रे भयरे जथा जहि हृदय थरे किंतु ए भीमस्थले रण राज्य प्रापति अटई मो विचारे अधम गति. I salute Madhusudan Rao. I don't know how you take, all of you are, more talented and professional in this, but this is what I remember. I think the language, the use, it is more than the original. See, Barsa Kavita. प्रश्नवण शैले कले बसती सौमित्री संगे प्रभु राघवपति लक्ष्मण घन देखी नाचई केकी भकत जथा भव माया उपेखी नील निरद माळे खेळे चपड़ा खळ पीरती प्राय सदा चपड़ा बढ़ी जाऊची भेदी बाड़ी कियारी मर्यादा लंघे जथा स्वतंत्रा नारी. Original Sanskrit, see the language. I think they're the best in the Odia language. I salute them. Dhanyavad. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just one thing, that is called transcreation. That is how they are more, sometimes they sound more beautiful than, I think they are not exactly equivalents of the original. Sometimes the translation also is on an elevated plane. It travels to, it travels beyond the original. That is why, am I audible? So that is why there is one thing I had missed out. So I remembered when you pointed them out that how much the persona, you translate the words, you translate the narrative style, you change the narrative style, you create a new text. But remember that in the original, the poet or the writer, the author, the original author, the shadow, the persona of that shadow always, persona of that author always remains. How much of that author can you take it into your translation? When you can take it, that author, I don't think that in my limited experience as a translator, I think I have not been able to, even while translating Manoj Panda also, I have not been able to recreate, transform that persona which haunts the text like a ghost all the while. So it is very difficult to transform that persona. You have to accept that, and you have to just recreate that persona and think like him, and if possible, a translator, it depends on the competence of translator, as you have pointed out, Madhusudan Rao, Radhanath Rai and others, that how they have also recreated that persona, and that is how they have transcended beyond the translation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now here is a poem by Guljar. Title of the poem is English. Title is Sketch. It's a love poem. The speaker speaks few lines, leaves many things unsaid. It is left to the imagination and interpretation of the readers. Sketch. It happens like this. The lover remembers a day when his lady love, his girlfriend, came to his room, spent some time with him, and during her stay, she sketched a small plant and a cigarette packet and left. Maybe some weeks or months or years have passed by, and recalling that day, the lover says, the title of the poem is Sketch. याद है एक दिन मेरे मेज पे बैठे बैठे सिगरेट की डिबिया पर तुमने छोटे से एक पौधे का स्केच बनाया था। याद है एक दिन मेरे मेज पे बैठे बैठे सिगरेट की डिबिया पर तुमने छोटे से एक पौधे का स्केच बनाया था। आकर देखो उस पौधे पर फूल आया है। Small poem of 6 lines. Well, it has been translated by some. I have just added one line to that. Dr. Mani Krishnan once said in course of discussion, the translation is an act of love. Unless you love, you have a great liking for the author or for his writing, for her writing, you can't translate very well. This poem sketch. Do you remember how one day, while sitting at my table, you sketched a small plant on a cigarette packet? Do you remember how one day, while sitting at my table, you sketched a small plant on a cigarette packet? If you could come and see, the tiny plant has opened into flowers. On different translations, I found they have translated like this, because in the original, आकर देखो उस पौधे पर फूल आया है. Come and see how the plant has blossomed or how the plant has bloomed, like that. I have just added one line in between. If you could come and see, if you just translate it, come and see how the plant has bloomed, it sounds like a kind of command or order. And the cordial tone, the warm tone, the loving tone is missing, which perhaps with the addition of this line, if you could come and see, is adequately breached. That I think so. I had been to Lucknow University to attend the All India English Teachers Conference. There are some 350 to 400 delegates from different parts of the country, all teachers of English. It was a 3-day conference, and in one of the sessions, the noted filmmaker and poet Guljar had been invited. Very handsome man. For about 15 to 20 minutes, he spoke in English, and after that, there was a lively discussion, interaction, you can say. And in course of that, one of the delegates stood up and said, or rather asked Guljar, "Sir, please sing a song." Perhaps he had an idea that anyone connected with film industry in any capacity is capable of singing. Guljar smiled and said, "With that request, you are taking great deal of risk because I am no singer. At best, I can recite a poem written by me." And he recited a very well-known poem of his titled Kitabein. That was more than 20 years back when he had just composed that poem, but it's very, very relevant even in our time. In that poem, what happens? The speaker of the poem is a passionate book lover. But when the poem begins, we find that the book lover is cut between two worlds, the world of books and the world of computer. He has a feeling that the status that books enjoyed, even in the recent past, is fast declining. And throughout the poem, there are hints that perhaps in future, there will be no books at all. Books will be replaced by computer. So this is how the poem begins. It's a long poem. I'll skip some lines. So when the poem begins, the book lover is seated in his chair. In front of him, there is a glass almirah with a glass front, full of books, but it is locked. But for the book lover, books are just not inanimate, lifeless objects. They have their feelings, their emotions. They peep through the glass, look at this man, and talk among themselves. There was a time when this man was so fond of us, but these days he has hardly any time for us, and they are growing restless. From this point, the poem begins. किताबें झांकती है बंद अलमारी के शीशों से, बड़ी हसरत से तकती है, महीनों अब मुलाकातें नहीं होती, जो शामें उनकी सोहबत में कटा करती थी अब अक्सर गुजर जाती है कंप्यूटर के पर्दों पर, बड़ी बेचैन रहती हैं किताबें। उन्हें अब नींद में चलने की आदत हो गई है। जो कदरें वो सुनाती थी कि जिनके सेल कभी मरते नहीं थे, वो कदरें अब नज़र आती नहीं घर में। जो रिश्ते वो सुनाते थे वो सब उधड़े उधड़े हैं। कोई सफ़ा पलटता हूँ तो एक सिसकी निकलती है, लाइक दिस, दीर्घोश्वास। कई लफ्ज़ों के माने गिर पड़े हैं, बिना पत्तों के सूखे टूंड लगते हैं वो सब अल्फाज जिन पर अब कोई माने नहीं उगते। बहुत सी इस्तलाहें हैं जो मिट्टी के सिकुरों की तरह बिखरी पड़ी है, गिलासों ने उन्हें मतरूक कर डाला। The earthen cups which were once there have been made redundant by the glass tumblers. And then he speaks of something to which all of us can relate. Well, there are some of us who, while turning the pages, put their finger on the tongue. Let's imagine a very passionate, intense book lover with a new book in his hand. And as he reads, he is turning the pages and putting the finger on the tongue. जुबां पे जायका आता था जो सफ़ा पलटने का, अब उंगली क्लिक करने से बस एक झपकी गुजरती है। बहुत कुछ ताबता खुलता चला जाता है पर्दों पर, किताबों से जो जाती राब्ता था, द पर्सनल बॉन्ड आई हैड विद बुक्स वंस अपॉन ए टाइम, कट गया है। कभी सीने पे रख के लेट जाते थे, कभी गोदी में लेते थे, कभी घुटनों को अपने रिहल की सूरत बनाकर नीम सजदे में पढ़ा करते थे, छूते थे जबीं से। वो सारा इल्म तो मिलता रहेगा बाद में भी, knowledge will keep coming in some way or other, not necessarily through books. वो सारा इल्म तो मिलता रहेगा बाद में भी, पर वो जो मिला करते थे किताबों में, सूखे फूल और महके हुए रुके, इट्स a reference to love letters when books are exchanged for non-academic purpose to build a relation. वो सारा इल्म तो मिलता रहेगा बाद में भी, पर वो जो मिला करते थे किताबों में, सूखे फूल और महके हुए रुके, किताबें मांगने, गिरने, उठाने के बहाने रिश्ते बनते थे, उनका क्या होगा? वो शायद अब नहीं होंगे। That's how the poem ends. And I would like to read one poem of Jayanta Mohapatra. 2-3 months before his death, he wrote this poem. He was running 95. This is the Odia poem. 95 वर्ष पूरीजीव मते यही आसंता अश्विन अष्टमी को, न पूरी पारे भी बंधु देखी पारनु मते ना, यही भंगा घटटी रे रहे मु, तार नीरवता भितर केही छुई पारंती नाही मते, कहा पाई मिछे मिछे कांदे मु, कहा पाई मिछे मिछे हसे, कविता लेखे बोली जानिछु तो बास सेतिकी, बाहरी पारे ना ता भितरु, दही पखाळ बड़ी चूरा खाई कविता लेखे खरा दिने, इंग्राजी रे बेसी, अंटारे खोर्दा गामुछा गुड़े देले केमिति आराम लगे। भोर भोर घरु पदा को बाहरले बाउंस गछ पत्रु टोपा टोपा पानी पड़े, भावे मु तार लुह तो नुहे ये, मु कौन जाने जो दुख बाउंस पत्रटी भितर भी घर करी रही, कौन जाने भी जहाँपाई हजई देली सबु मोर, जहाँपाई कांदुथिली दिन दिन, से थिला दूर समुद्र परी आतुर किछिटी, जे तार अदृश्य कला कला आखिरे भल पाइथिला गोपन रे मते। When I translated this poem into English, well, first line, he made a minor change. First line is, I would be turning 96. He was very eager to see 96. Just 2 months before that, he left the world. I would be turning 96 this coming October. 22nd October is his birthday, and he passed away in August. But then that might not happen. My friend, you can't see me, I know. Can you? I live in this broken house. Because of its unusual silence, no one is able to come near. Here, what do I cry for? And what do I laugh for? I will never know. Perhaps there is no clear reason, I guess. That I write poems, I'm sure you know. Well, that's all. Just can't get out of it. Taking watered rice and curd in the summer heat. Tying around my waist a khorda woven gamcha. Give me much comfort as I write poems, more in English than in Odia. When I step out of the house very early in the morning, the leaves of the bamboos keep dripping, slow, tiny droplets. I wonder if they are not its tears. How would I know grief had also made its home in the aging leaves of the bamboos? Just as I don't know one for whom I lost all that I had with me, for whom I kept crying for days on end, was perhaps something like the tormented faraway sea, which in its dark, invisible eyes secretly loved me. We all know his love, his devotion for Lord Jagannath, on which culture, Jagannath cult and Jagannath culture, there was a very beautiful session in the morning. And the poet Jayanta Mohapatra had a great devotion for Lord Jagannath. It is another matter because he was Christian, he was not allowed to go to the temple. किंतु रथ यात्रा बेले थर थर से कहती मु टिके जाइकी से रथ दौड़ी छुई देले मते शांति लगे केते थर हुए तो से करथिबे सेटा and that also explains why he didn't like to be cremated as it happens in case of Christians. जे तार अदृश्य कला कला आखिरे perhaps it's a reference to Lord Jagannath. We can't be very sure of that. And there is a poem which was very popular and he was also very fond of this poem. Before his death, in so many seminars and conferences, he recited this poem. Few lines of that. गपटिए आरंभ रे जयंत महापात्र केबे किछि करि नथिला आजिर पिला माने जानती नाही से कौन करथिला जो माने जानिथिले ताकू किछि किछि से माने समस्ते प्राय दुनिया रु गलेनी भयंकर लोकटिए थिला से प्रकृत रे ताकू केही देखि नाहंती सांग माने बा शत्रु माने केमिति देखिबे जे ताकू से तो जलु थाए दिन राति ता अपना कर्मर नियारे लोकों को दिसे नियाटी केवल आ दिसे झपसा धुआं किछि जयंत महापात्र never did anything worthwhile. Today's young are unaware of what he did. Those who knew him little are dead and gone. He was an awful person. To tell the truth, no one had ever seen him, neither his friends nor relatives or his enemies. But then, how would they know him? He was on fire day and night, burning in the flames of his own karma. People noticed only the fire and some smoke, hazy, unclear. And something amusing about this man and my own experience. ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ଜୟନ୍ତ ମହାପାତ୍ର ଅନ୍ଧାରରେ ପଶିପାରେ ନାହିଁ ଯେଉଁ ଅନ୍ଧାର ଝିଅମାନଙ୍କ ରକ୍ତ ଭିଜା ଜଙ୍ଘର ଇତିହାସରେ ଥାଏ ଯେଉଁ ଅନ୍ଧାର ଈଶ୍ୱରଙ୍କ ନିସ୍ତେଜ ଆଖିରେ ଥାଏ କିନ୍ତୁ ଜୟନ୍ତ ମହାପାତ୍ରକୁ ଖୋଜିଲେ କଟକରେ ପାଇପାରିବେ କାଠଯୋଡ଼ି ବନ୍ଧ ଉପରେ ହେଉ ବା ଖ୍ରୀଷ୍ଟ କଲେଜରେ ପିଅନ କ୍ୱାର୍ଟର୍ସରେ ପିଅନର ଧର୍ଷିତା ଝିଅଟିର କୋହଭରା ସ୍ତନରେ ପାଇବେ ନିଶ୍ଚୟ ମନ ଦେଇ ଖୋଜିଲେ ପାଇବେ ତାକୁ ଆମ୍ବ ଗଛର ବୁଢ଼ା ପତରରେ ଡେଣା ଭଙ୍ଗା ପକ୍ଷୀର ଚିତ୍କାରରେ ବା ପିଲାଟିର କାନ୍ଦରେ ଯାହାର ନାଲି ବେଲୁନ ଫାଟି ଯାଇଥିଲା ଅଷ୍ଟମୀ ପୂଜାର ଭିଡ଼ରେ ନା ଗିର୍ଜା ଘରେ ବା ମନ୍ଦିରରେ ମୋଟେ ପାଇବେ ନାହିଁ ତାକୁ. That's why Jayanta Mohapatra can never enter darkness. The darkness that lives on in the history of blood-soaked thighs of a woman, the darkness that rests in God's listless eyes. But you can find Jayanta Mohapatra in Cuttack on the very bank of the Kathajodi or at the attendance quarters of Christ College, in the sobbing breasts of the peon's raped daughter. You will find him surely if you really look for him. You will find him in the aging leaves of the mango in his backyard, in the anguished call of the bird with a broken wing, or in the disconsolate cry of the child whose red balloon got burst in the jostling crowds on the 8th day of Durga Puja. No, you would never find him in church and temple. ମୁଁ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଏହି ପ୍ୟାସେଜଟାକୁ ଟ୍ରାନ୍ସଲେଟ୍ କଲି he was happy with the translation. କହିଲେ ଗୋପ ମୋର ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କଥା କହିବାକୁ ଅଛି. ମୁଁ କହିଲି ସାର୍ କ'ଣ? ଆଉଥରେ ହେଜିଟେଟ୍ କଲେ ଟିକେ. ମୁଁ କହିଲି ସାର୍ କହୁନାହାନ୍ତି କ'ଣ? Whose red balloon got burst in the jostling crowds on the 8th day of Durga Puja. Because the 8th day, ସେଟାକୁ ଟିକେ ଲେଖିବ ସାର୍ ସେଇଟାକୁ ନ ଲେଖିଲେ ବାକି ସବୁ ତ ଠିକ୍ଠାକ୍ ଅଛି ନା ବାକି ସବୁ ଠିକ୍ଠାକ୍ ଅଛି it doesn't affect the poetic flow but please mention that ମୁଁ କହିଲି ସାର୍ କ'ଣ ସାର୍ ମୁଁ ଜାଣିପାରୁନି ସେଇଟାକୁ ମେନସନ୍ କରିବା କ'ଣ ଦରକାର ନାଇଁ ମେନସନ୍ କରିବା କିଛି ନାହିଁ ଯେ ସେଇଟା ମୋ ଜନ୍ମଦିନ ତ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ତ ମୁଁ କହିଲି I found it very amusing, very interesting also. But I consider it my good fortune to have been very closely associated with him. And for years we worked together translating. And I must say, I learned a lot of things from him because of my association with him. Now I hand over the mic to my friend Chitta.
Thank you, Dr. Misra. Sorry that I have lost. It is time already, so we have been asked to wrap up the session.
Thank you, Madam Sneha Prabhadas, Professor Chitran Misra, and Professor Goparanjan Misra. Thank you for the patient listening to all of our dignitaries, erudite professors, and thank you very much.